Okay, so by the time the child is about 6 years old, after they've passed through the oral, the anal, and the phallic stage, they reach what Freud called the latency period. The latency period is really nothing's going on. There's no erogenous zone, there's no conflict, and what we see is some further intensification of gender roles, but kids basically are going to school, playing with friends, developing hobbies, developing physically, that sort of thing. This is from 6 years to puberty. Sometimes I think Freud just didn't know what was going on during that phase, but he had nothing. And then the last stage is what we call the genital stage. So the erogenous zone returns to the genitals, but in this case, it's not in that symbolic relationship with the opposite sex parent. Rather, it is, Sorry about that. Anyway, instead of the symbolic relationship with the parent, now it is a relationship focused on other individuals appropriately. So the focus is that reawakening of sexuality, but now no longer directed at the opposite sex parent. The conflict is sex and aggression, which I think is an interesting, where does that come from? It all ties together. Remember, Freud said, what's going on deep in our unconscious? It's that conflict between Eros and Thanatos, the life force and the death force, which manifests itself in sex and aggression. That's the conflict we see as adults. And if we've gotten hung up in any of the previous stages, we are not able to thrive as adults. If we have a hang up in the oral stage or the anal or the phallic stage, it interferes with our abilities to thrive in adult life. And Freud believed the meaning of life was to work and to love, as you can see there. Let's briefly, before we completely throw Freud away, take a quick look at the good and the bad. What are the strengths? In my mind, and in lots of people's mind, Freud was one of the most brilliant thinkers of the 20th century. He gives us stuff that sounds so entirely ludicrous, but we can't throw him out because of all the stuff that just at the core of us makes sense. So super important figure in psychology, super important figure, I believe, in the world all around. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of weaknesses with his theory. One of the things was that he believed that by the time you end that phallic stage, by the time you're about 5 to 6 years old, your personality is set. You're not going to change. And I don't know about you, but I think there's a lot more development that occurs beyond 5 years old. And I don't remember the person I was at 5 or 6 years old, but I would imagine myself to be different from the person I was at 5 years or 6 years old. He also, we would all agree, probably puts way too much emphasis on the unconscious forces. Yes, I certainly believe that we do have unconscious elements to us. Is it the largest piece of that iceberg? I'm not so sure. The whole psychosexual stages are weird, and a lot of people believe that Freud's theory had just way too much emphasis on sex all the way around. He, in his collection of data, only used case study method, which is not something we know we can apply to cause and effect, though he did, so we would say that that's a flawed methodology. And he had a very biased sample. He was treating people who had what we would consider to be psychosomatic illnesses, physical problems without a physical cause. And he was drawing these people's experiences and using them as his basis for his theory. Are they like everybody? Obviously not. So definitely a very biased sample.